question concerns nuclear weapons. First, what material and institutional changes to U.S. nuclear forces will your candidate support? And to clarify, I'm not asking about changes to stated U.S. policies such as the No First Use Act that Elizabeth Warren has supported. I'm asking what specific material and institutional changes to the structure of U.S. nuclear forces your candidate will support to, for example, make the No First Use Act credible. And second, should the president alone have the legal authority to order the use of nuclear weapons? And if not, what changes should be made to nuclear launch authority? Thank you.
All right, I'd like Lauren Nidell to be the first person to address that question.
Yeah, you know what? I actually did not research that. That's not one of the questions that I had. I would not know how to address that. The only thing that I will say is that Bernie does not believe in, Bernie believes in the Constitution. And he does not believe that any president has the right to declare war, and that has to be Congress. So that answers part of that question. Bernie absolutely is totally against nuclear, and he's against any proliferation of nuclear energy. He wants to end, he does not want to have any more nuclear power plants. He has come out saying that there's not anything right now where it's in place for safe disposal of nuclear waste. So he's obviously in favor of any kind of foreign policy relations that will improve decreasing nuclear proliferation, and obviously he wants to reinvest time and talking into the Iran nuclear agreement that they had to end, the ridiculous counter issues that Trump did with ending the Iran talks and the Iran agreement.
Okay, thank you. Melissa Mayer, please.
Yeah, so in terms of nuclear weapons, Marianne, I'm trying to look for the specifics right now. She often mentions in her talks about the B-21 Raider, which carries traditional nuclear weapons, and about, she tells this story with specifics that I wish I could, I wish I had Marianne to recount it specifically right now, but it's a very moving story where she talks about the B-21 Raider and about how much nuclear power that these weapons have and how many of them have been ordered. And just I'm sorry that I'm not stating this perfectly because it's such a powerful story, just about how the amount of nuclear weapons we possess cannot possibly be just for legitimate security reasons. I mean, it's enough where life as we know it, we have enough to prevent life for a very long time. So it has less to do with our national security interests and more about short-term profits for defense contractors. So, Marianne works very hard to name a lot of these issues that are not talked about and things that we don't really kind of see in traditional politicians bringing up. And Marianne not taking corporate donations and not standing on behalf of a lot of these corporate interests does have the wherewithal to stand up and name, and she stands up very strongly about nuclear weapons and how much we possess and how much don't actually reflect our safety and our security interests, but stand for short-term profits for defense contractors.
Thank you. Lauren Pothier.
So you mentioned the No First Use Act, Elizabeth Warren was a part of, and then you mentioned about should a president be the sole perpetrator of using nuclear weapons, and personally I believe that should be no. I believe, similar to what Lauren said here, believing in the Constitution, the president should not be the sole decider of war. It's Congress's job. And Elizabeth Warren believes that as well. She, as I mentioned before, way before when we talked about war, she wants to end the war, she wants to bring the troops home. But I do want to, before I talk more about it, I do want to do some more research on it, but I will definitely look more into this question. And what was the other part of the question that you asked? I just wanted to...
What specific changes to like deploying nuclear forces would your candidate support? So, for example, does she support getting rid of the? Does she support like getting rid of the nuclear triad, for example, to make like the no first use commitment credible?
All right. I personally would love to look into that some more. I don't have an answer for that right now, but I will look into that more. So, with that.
Yes, please. Thank you for that question. It's a really important question. You know, just kind of at the high level, at the conceptual level, you know, when people, you know, talk about reducing spending or investments in nuclear weapons, sometimes there's this knee-jerk, oh, you know, does that, you know, make us less secure compared to other nuclear-armed countries? And, you know, I think that we also need to look at it a different way. I mean, we have, you know, one of the strongest militaries, we have the strongest military. We spend more than the next 10 or so countries combined. We have one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world. And in a lot of ways, the US sets the tone. So when we're amping up our spending on nuclear weapons in general, it causes other countries like China, Russia, you know, across the world to continue to do the same for fear that, you know, we are going rogue or we're preparing for war, because that's what those investments signal. Now, in terms of what Tulsi supports regarding nuclear weapons, one thing in particular that I'd like to highlight is earlier this year, when the Trump administration, you know, indicated that they would be withdrawing from the INF treaty, she actually introduced legislation, led a press conference that focused on prohibiting the use of any taxpayer dollars for nuclear weapons that violate the INF treaty, despite his withdrawal. Regarding your other part of your question on whether or not presidents should be able to unilaterally use a nuclear weapon, absolutely not. The responsibility to start a war lays with Congress. And, you know, if Trump were to even suggest something like that, I hope anyone who is in a decision-making responsibility in his administration would step up and do the right thing, because of course the answer to that is no.